Shortstop, a strong position or fool's gold? Let's discuss on Fantasy Baseball Today in 5. Welcome into FBT in 5 on Monday, February 12th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Chris Towers, and let's talk about the shortstop position. Differing opinions, Chris. I know that sounds like you like it a little bit more. Scott's a little bit more apprehensive. What do you think?
Yeah, if you want to listen to the full episode of the show, you should do that because there was some good discussion of just the difference in how Scott and I view the position. I think shortstop is quite deep, and there are, well more than 12 guys that I feel pretty good about starting. I think it's the best position in fantasy baseball. But part of that comes down to the fact that, I like Xander Bogaerts a little more than Scott does. I like Trevor Story. I like Willy Adames. There are a handful of guys outside of that top 12 that I feel a little more confident about. So it's not so much that I feel like you should wait at shortstop, because when you do that, you're passing on some of the most high profile names, 8 guys in the top 40 of NFBC ADP right now at shortstop. It's really hard to build a really good team if you're just fading the high end at shortstop, but you can, and you'll still get decent production. Your middle infielder, in my opinion, should probably be a shortstop. There's a decent chance your DH or utility will end up being a shortstop. So I do think it's a very, very deep and rich position.
All right, well, let's get into sleepers here. And Chris, I know that you are a fan of Tim Anderson, the ADP. I mean, the guy is free, 339.
Yeah, and look, he's got to sign somewhere. And I don't know if I would say Tim Anderson's my very, very most favorite sleeper at shortstop, because I like, obviously Jackson Holliday, if he gets called, if he looks like he's going to get an opportunity, or Trevor Story, I'm with you on that one. He's been basically a 2020 guy in 137 games while playing very poorly and dealing with injuries. But Tim Anderson, before his knee sprain last year, his first 10 games, he had 5 stolen bases, was hitting 318, looked like Tim Anderson, looked like he was going to take advantage of the rules and run more, came back early from the knee sprain and was just never right. And you could tell in the way he played the entire season. His sprint speed was way down, his quality of contact, everything was affected. If he's healthy and if he signs somewhere, which I expect to happen in the next week or so, I think Tim Anderson is a really good sleeper who was going inside the top 100 this time a year ago.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, the ADP for Tim Anderson is 339. His ADP last year, 86.6. So, yeah, I mean, it's a huge discount year over year. Sleeper for me, you mentioned the name Trevor Story, more of a bounce back candidate. That's fine. Last year, he was kind of rushed back after having elbow surgery and admitted that he was just trying to survive up at the plate. Now he gets his first normal offseason since signing with the Red Sox. If you remember, 2 years ago, he signed after the lockout, just 2 weeks before the season started. And then last offseason, he had that elbow surgery. Even with all that going on, he's played 137 games with the Red Sox. Trevor Story has 19 homers and 23 steals. So if he can play 140, 150 games, I think he goes 20-20. I think there's upside for even more steals, maybe 30-plus steals. It's going to come with a lower batting average, but the ADP 237.8, I am buying on Trevor Story. Chris, give me a breakout at shortstop.
So on the full episode of the show, I talked about Ezequiel Tovar. That was only because I didn't want all 3 of us to pick Oneil Cruz as our breakouts, because Oneil Cruz is maybe the official fantasy baseball mascot of the FBT podcast. He is top of the line in terms of athleticism, in terms of raw power. He has, I believe, the hardest hit ball in the StatCast era, dating back 9 seasons now. He's just someone who, if he keeps that strikeout rate to 30%, Oneil Cruz is probably going to have an 800 OPS, and he's probably going to hit 25 to 30 home runs, and he might steal 25 to 30 bases as well. Probably doesn't have as much stolen base potential as Elly De La Cruz, but very, very similar athletic profile, very similar overall profile as him at a much, much cheaper cost.
I completely agree on Oneil Cruz as a breakout, and some people might find it a little bit hypocritical that I've called players like Elly De La Cruz or Royce Lewis a bust or overvalued at their ADP. The difference is that Oneil Cruz is going closer to the top 100. He's going around, 80, 90 has been the ADP pretty consistently here. That's a huge difference when Ellie De La Cruz is the second or third hitter drafted on your team. Royce Lewis, the third or fourth hitter drafted on your team. You could take a little bit more risks where Oneil Cruz is going in drafts. Chris, give me a bust at shortstop.
Anthony Volpe. It was a decent rookie season in real life. almost 20. I think, did he go 2020? Yeah, 2020. Yep. Won a Gold Glove. He's a good baseball player, but for fantasy, there are just some massive, massive red flags. 209 batting average, even the expected batting average, 230. That assumes that there's going to be improvement in the quality of contact profile. He really tries to hit a lot of home runs to the pull side, but that leads to a lot of weak pop-ups, infield fly balls, and just lazy fly balls to the outfield. So I don't know if he has the raw power or the bat control to be a Marcus Semien type. I think the upside could be Marcus Semien-esque, but the bigger problem, he was one of the worst hitters in baseball against both off-speed and breaking balls. Expected WOBA under 250 against both categories of pitches. That's really, really hard to get around. Anthony Volpe is going to have to take some big steps forward to be more than just a fringe fantasy option.
Yeah, and I completely agree on the Anthony Volpe call. The name I'll quickly mention here, CJ Abrams, just feels overvalued. The ADP is 58, but a lot of drafts that I've seen, you have to take him inside the top 50, maybe even the top 40. And I do think there is significant downside because he is bad against left-handed pitching. He hits a lot of infield fly balls as well. This was a top prospect. Maybe he looks foolish. I'm just not willing to use a top 40 or top 50 pick on CJ Abrams. Our favorites to draft, for Chris, it's going to be Francisco Lindor and Oneil Cruz. For me, also Francisco Lindor, so we'll be battling it out. I like Trevor Story quite a bit as well. For more extensive fantasy baseball coverage, listen to the Fantasy Baseball Today podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, the Audacy app, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Thanks for listening to Fantasy Baseball Today in 5, and we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.